Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, the official translation of One Piece chapter 980 is out. Typically, the way that I've been doing this video is that we talk about the official translation and how it is different to the fan translation, and then fill out the video with comments from you guys and talk about them. But in this chapter, there really is no significant translation differences between the fan translation and the official translation. So I asked you guys on Twitter whether you guys would like to still see this video even without any differences, and the answer was generally yeah, so here we are. But I do want to point out something that I felt like the official translation made just a little bit more clear. I mean, it's not fully clear yet, but a little bit more clear in terms of understanding this past chapter. So in the official, after Apoo managed to cut Zoro, Zoro thinks this, huh? A slashing attack? He doesn't have a blade, and I didn't see the trajectory of his attack at all. What are those powers he has? Guys, to me, I take this to be Oda's explanation for how Apoo managed to slice Zoro and to a lesser extent managed to attack Luffy. From this panel alone, I know it's not outright stated, but I get the impression that Zoro was prepared to dodge attacks. In fact, him and Luffy had been doing exactly that beforehand. I think Zoro was using observation haki, and even still, he didn't see Apoo's attack coming at all. It's like this is the reaction that I would expect to see from somebody who thought that they were prepared, thought that, okay, nothing's gonna hit me, you know, I'm on high alert, and yet it did anyway. And so this becomes less about Zoro and Luffy failing and more about Apoo succeeding and Apoo's powers working in such a way to bypass typical means of detection. And at the very end, when Zoro says, what the hell are those powers? It's like Oda throwing that comment out for us, the readers, to think about the very same question. Like, yeah, you should have expected Zoro and Luffy to dodge these attacks. But they didn't. Why didn't they? But yeah, that's a good intro. Let's get into the comments. The issue here is not that whether Apoo's attack can be detected by haki or not. Luffy being unconscious for a single attack is so disappointing. Did he gain something on his training? How's he gonna handle Kaido's attack? So this is where power scaling and headcanon becomes like a pseudo-truth that masks reality, right? How hard can Apoo actually hit somebody? And what evidence do you have to base your opinion on that on? I'll wait. So what you're telling me is that you've decided just how strong Apoo is and how hard he can hit based on his one previous fight in the entire story in which he took on an admiral, and that's it. And another thing I want to throw in here, just, you know, for argument's sake, right? So Apoo's ability could not be detected by Zoro. He didn't see it coming. If you don't see it coming, you wouldn't defend yourself from it. So this was an attack that likely went through any defensive armament haki that Luffy or Zoro may have put up. Because they never put it up. Because they never used armament haki. Additionally, there's some questions as to whether Apoo's ability struck within Luffy as well, which should be interesting because I'm not sure how that applies to haki. I could actually imagine the sound waves traveling, you know, through Luffy's ear inside of his body and then creating some kind of explosion. Doesn't seem impossible. But yeah, I guess my point here is, 1, was Luffy and Zoro using haki in order to defend themselves? That would obviously make a difference. And 2, would that even have mattered, and does Apoo just hit that hard? Is Apoo a glass cannon type fighter? Deals a lot of damage, can't take a lot of damage. We haven't seen him fight enough to really know. Next comment. Apoo has always been this strong. He literally done the exact same combo he has done to Kizaru and Sabaody. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying here, right? Like, he took on an Admiral Kizaru. Now, it's debatable as to whether Kizaru took him seriously. But, I mean, Kizaru can move at the speed of light. Supposedly, or at least very, very fast. And Apoo still landed a hit. And you know, Kizaru looks surprised all the time. But I think he might have looked especially surprised in this case. That could just be Apoo's ability. Something that nobody expects. Much in the same way as we said in the review to Caesar Clown. Next comment, Apoo would never want to face Corazon. What are you playing? I can't hear you. I'll be honest, guys, I really think that this might be an actual thing. I know that it appeared as though Apoo sort of like created attacks out of sound outside of being able to hear it, but I do wonder whether you just plug your ears and then Apoo is just cancelled. You know, on one hand, I understand that it would seem obvious, it would seem intuitive, but then you have the whole rubber and lightning interaction from Skypiea with Enel. And this feels like it's on the same level. Either way, there's gotta be a downside to this ability in some way. Like again, using the example of Caesar Clown, Caesar Clown's ability to steal oxygen from the environment had a radius, and Luffy eventually determined that radius. I do think that Apu's ability is going to have a major weakness, whether that's being able to plug your ears and not being affected by the attack, or the attack taking too long sort of to create because he's got to start, he's got to wind up into it by playing all of the various instruments. Or maybe the best idea here is just to become in tune with the rhythm itself so that you know when and where to place the Haki to sort of feel the vibrations or, you know, feel the music. You fight Apu like you'd be playing Guitar Hero. Next comment, you guys are highly underestimating Apu. You guys see Luffy and Zoro at the top already competing with the Yonko, etc. And they're not. They're still growing into that. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. Apu is a supernova. Supernova are still contemporaries of Luffy and Zoro. Yeah, Luffy the 5th Yonko, but we all know that he's not there yet. He's very, very strong. In fact, I think that he might be the strongest in terms of pure physical brute strength and speed. I think that Gear 4th is just on another level entirely if he can beat, one of the supernovas during the time frame that he can use that. But he's certainly not still a Yonko. And I think that these fights at this point in the story should still be good fights. Especially when you're faced with someone like Apu, whose abilities are, seem to act in a way different to everybody else's. Next comment, if Oda were to go the Togashi route, Hunter x Hunter, with added monologues, then fans wouldn't have problems like this. Oh my god, I could not imagine a comment that would inspire more anger and frustration than this one. I hate this, and I am so glad One Piece is the way that it is. But this person is right. If there is even a sniff of ambiguity in One Piece, you see it every single week, even a sniff of it, something that doesn't seem to be explained or people don't understand, they immediately hate it a lot of the times. I'm not talking about everybody, but you see it in the community. And really, all it would take from Oda is like a long monologue every single time, fully explaining every aspect of what is going on for whatever problems people have to just completely disappear, like this problem or this problem. No, Oda explains it all on the page, but that totally takes away from the pacing of the story and presumes that your audience isn't smart enough to understand what is going on based on what is given. Like, there's some times when an explanation is necessary, and there's some comments about Hunter x Hunter fights versus One Piece, how they're overcomplicated to the point that Togashi has to add monologues in order for the fights to make sense, because otherwise, only very few people would get it. But for every time that I feel like there's a moment like this where an explanation actually adds to your enjoyment of the fight, there's an explanation that is completely unnecessary. That's just like, okay, well, this is very obviously the case. You didn't need to explain. I have the same problem with Demon Slayer as well. And this just seems to be the trend. I mean, maybe not the trend, but I see this more commonly than I did in the past, where authors just presume that their audience is so stupid that they have to explain everything or they're going to be unhappy. And frankly, it just seems to be the case. Maybe that is the smarter move. That would certainly shut up a lot of the haters who constantly point at things that don't make sense because they haven't spent any time whatsoever thinking about how it could make sense, based on what's actually given. But at the very least, I sit here fully appreciative of the fact that Oda doesn't feel the need to explain everything. He leaves many things ambiguous for us to figure out because I presume that he thinks that we're smart enough. Thank you, Oda. I do feel smart enough. I'm actually thinking about making a video again talking about Luffy and Katakuri because I still see a lot of people who don't understand that fight. But like you in order to understand what's going on there and how the power scaling and how the fight actually happened, I think requires you to sort of put things together. And this is a really common thing in One Piece. But none of this explanation and a video such as that, it wouldn't be necessary if Oda just made a giant monologue explaining exactly what was going on. But I think doing something like this, a casualty, is just, how it is that I at least enjoy One Piece. With this vague factor allows you to figure it out yourself, which is rewarding. And at the same time, going in depth and explaining everything, it takes away from the pacing when it's not really necessary. Anyway, guys, I'm glad One Piece is the way that it is. Next comment, sound waves can turn solid matter to liquid if applied properly. Luffy and Zoro were lucky to be able to escape given they couldn't even see the attacks. You can't dodge what you can't see, you can't predict what you don't know. Guys, I can't verify this because I don't know enough about sound to be able to, but this comment really stuck out to me and it's like, wow, this is cool. If Apu could do this, good lord. Next comment, the problem isn't power scaling, the problem is that the supernova I care less about is the one doing the most right now. Well, this comment has some truth in it. You know, I think that we saw the same thing earlier with Capone, and then all it took was about, I don't know, a few times in the story for Capone to become one of some people's most favorite supernova. You just gotta give Oda time to develop this sort of thing. If you're always looking for immediate returns, I think that you cap the total amount of payoff that you can receive from a story. Yeah, there's a lot of characters in One Piece. These things take time. I wouldn't be writing off any of the supernova at this point. Next comment, JB, I think you're taking a shit on Haki too much. In a world without Haki, Akainu, Kizaru, and Kaido would literally be unkillable, even Ace and Enel to some extent. Essentially having a Logia or OP mythical zone would mean you win the fight. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, so there was a little bit of over-exaggeration from my video that a lot of people, I think, took exception to. Because of the way that Oda designed some of the powers, particularly Logia's, Haki then becomes a necessity. Because you really can't have a situation every single arc against all the top tiers, such as Luffy needing water to defeat Crocodile and then being the exact counter for Enel. I don't think that you can do this endlessly. Eventually it's going to feel really cheap and convenient. And sometimes it'd be really difficult to find the exact counter for whatever particular kind of Logia or intangible person. But at the same time, this is sort of a self-inflicted wound. This is based on the creation of the powers themselves, and doesn't really support Haki as an individual power by itself. It sort of acts as a small fix for something else, and then becomes something that needs constant tinkering within the story. Next comment, we've seen Observation Haki master Enel, and he was still hit by Luffy, so it's very obvious that Haki isn't a get-out-of-free card, nor is it unbeatable, as it's weak against smell-based attacks, temperature, friction, and even air vibrations, which can't be dodged because they're confused by the attack and so have locked their Haki because they're distraught and confused, which stops Haki usage. I'm not really too sure about the end of this comment. I would like some elaboration, honestly. But to start with the beginning, I have a little bit of an issue with this because I don't think that Enel is a Observation Haki master. Did he have Observation Haki mantra? Yes. But you know, his ability to hear all of Skypiea, I think, is in relation to his Devil Fruit ability. And so the excuse that Oda came up with in order for Luffy to defeat Enel and his Observation Haki is Drunk Luffy, which is not something that you can carry through the end of the story. It's a meme, it's a joke, it's like Afro Luffy, you see it once and then the joke isn't funny anymore. Certainly this can't be at this point in the story, with observation being common, something that you commonly see. So in this case, this occupies the sort of, in my mind, 1 or 5% of the time in which somebody without Haki defeats somebody with Haki. And also bear in mind what we know now, that concentration or focus affects your Haki, and Luffy did everything possible in that fight, you know, to break Enel's concentration. This man actually thought that he was God. But to what I perceive to be your point here, which is that certain kinds of attacks bypass Haki, I agree. I guess that's exactly what we're arguing here with Apu. And I do think that that makes this story more interesting with its presence. But just as a side note here, I think that this comment and many other comments I got were more indicative of the fact that people stopped watching my video after I said certain things, and then they didn't wait around to see, you know, what the point was. Because I obviously wasn't saying that Observation Haki was unbeatable, because I made the very same point in the video that maybe there's some things that Observation Haki cannot detect. And it's Oda's job to create these sort of things and our job to figure it out. Next comment, fruits matter, look at Blackbeard. So this is in response to me saying that Haki is the most powerful ability in the series and it trumps Devil Fruits. And I believe this because people like Shanks and Roger, I don't believe had Devil Fruits, yet were still the most powerful. So do Devil Fruits matter? Was I over the top about that? A little bit, maybe. Devil Fruits certainly matter, but at the end of the day, you know, if you have Haki mastered completely, then you will never be attacked, nothing will ever hit you, and even if it did, it would never damage you. That's just the fact of the matter, at least based on what we know right now. Ignoring whatever convenient excuse or power Oda has created in order to trump this idea. And that's why Oda has to be careful with Haki, and ideally at end of game matchups such as Luffy versus Blackbeard, their Hakis cancel each other out so that you're just left with 3 Devil Fruit Blackbeard versus 1 Devil Fruit Luffy. And yeah, it would seem like a tall challenge if you phrase it like that, which is the point. Next comment, I'm a bit baffled by Zoro's interest in this chapter, honestly. Not that I don't enjoy seeing him cut buildings in half, but I thought he knew better than to cause a scene in such an unstable circumstance. He himself has cautioned us to be careful when taking on the Yonko. He followed Luffy to stop him from causing a ruckus, but instead of doing so, he only added to it. So honestly guys, this feels like more of a confirmation that I and other people as well were wrong about their interpretation of Zoro's actions in Punk Hazard, right? We thought that Zoro was telling Luffy to take the New World more seriously because he himself was taking it seriously while Luffy was not. But other people said to me at the time that they interpret this as meaning essentially that Zoro was also telling himself this simultaneously, that he was holding himself to the standard and he hadn't met it, that he as well as Luffy, both of them need to take the New World more seriously. And things like this happening, I think, substantiate that point of view. And finally, we have the last comment. I think everybody's wrong about Queen going after X-Drake, and he's in fact going after Who's Who because they seem to have some animosity towards one another. The first thing Who's Who said in 978 is, "But if Queen were to die, say tonight." So I bet this isn't the first time that they butt heads, either that or he feels page 1 is too weak after being beat by Soba Mask. I actually can really agree with this. I feel like X-Drake is too obvious. Oda, you know, again, it's playing that game of like, what's too obvious and what is the right answer, and it's really vague, right? But X-Drake just feels like what is the red herring, what Oda would assume everyone would be to think, and then instead he throws in a twist that would be a lot more interesting. We're all thinking X-Drake, and then bam, you have Who's Who. You know, this commenter is right? The first thing Who's Who brought up in the last chapter, no less, is what if Queen were to die, say tonight? Like, I think that there might be something here. At the very least, don't get dead set in that this must be X-Drake, for sure. It's just the most straightforward, obvious answer. The place where this might get interesting is if there starts to be many clues that it's instead of X-Drake, it's Who's Who, and at that point you might think, okay, well maybe Oda is trying to mislead us from X-Drake instead. But yeah guys, those are the comments that I wanted to discuss in this video. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.